Welcome back to NASCAR Lap by Lap with me, Garon Bach. We're going to take a look back at the Rockingham race weekend, look ahead at Talladega, and then joining me later will be Artie Kempner from NASCAR on Fox, the director over there. So to start off, the Rockingham weekend I think was a huge success. Over 1 million people watched the Xfinity Series race. The track was sold out at an average of 25,000 fans. And overall, I think for an Xfinity Series race, which is the AAA of NASCAR, it did very well. I think the race was great. I think the track was perfect for those type of cars. And I think overall that it was a great product for the fans and for the drivers alike. For the Truck Series race, it felt a little different. It wasn't as much passing. The truck, I think, is in that same stage as where the Cup Series car is, to where the truck just doesn't seem to have the power to make the passes that you would like to see from a race car with more power in the engine. But like I said, overall, I think the weekend was a huge success. I enjoyed having the time off that the Cup Series I'm sure enjoyed as well. But I would like to hit on the fact that the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series racing on a weekend where the Cup Series isn't racing, I think is a great idea. I I think back on baseball to where during spring training you will have games nowadays that are played between the top prospects between teams. And if you think about it in the sense of that, a lot of these drivers are prospects. They're drivers that are developmental drivers. They're drivers that are wanting to grow, wanting to be able to reach the peak of the sport. I think to have fans tune in to watch these younger drivers, to watch these younger teams is a great idea. I I think that if NASCAR were to be able to find it to where maybe once every 2 or 3 months to have a race weekend where the Cup Series has off, to where maybe it's the All Star weekend, anything like that, I think you could find points paying races, finding fans that are typically only watching the top series. I mean, just look at the numbers. The CW has done a fantastic job with the Xfinity Series. Has brought in 1 million fans in 10 weeks in a row, like I mentioned previously. But the fact that they're bringing in all these fans is not just a coincidence from, oh, it's on the CW. It's because that there is a good product being put out and fans want to watch it. And then, like I mentioned on the Truck Series side, I think the Truck Series, it's the lowest tier, but fans still watch it. And if you want to bring in fans to watch the race, more fans that is, having it on a weekend where there's no Cup Series racing is a great idea. I mean, over the past couple of years, the Truck Series has lost viewership, and I don't necessarily know why that is. Overall, NASCAR has lost viewership, so I think it's just a correlation effect. But I think having it on a weekend where it's an Easter weekend, a Friday night, it was a great idea to have the race that evening. Sadly, the winner in the Xfinity Series race, Jesse Love, originally did not win as his car was DQ'd. So then the winner, excuse me, went down to Sammy Smith. And Sammy Smith, I I think was a deserving driver to win that race. The race went all hectic. I was sad to see Casey Kane get wrecked earlier in the race, but was still happy to see him out there. But the race was one of those races that when people talk about Rockingham is what I would think of with people talk about the greatness of the track. But obviously, it's a different track. It's paved, it's newer asphalt, it's faster. So to see those races take place as ones that I'd heard about from whenever I was younger, ones I'd seen on a replay, it seemed to match that type of style. And the last point I want to get to about the race weekend is people who are clamoring for a cup date to be put there. And to be honest, I do not think there should be one. As I mentioned previously, think about it this way. If we keep a novelty track for the lower series, so that way fans, including myself last weekend, would want to find time to either record it and watch it later or tune in, they should keep it that way to bring in more viewership in the lower series, especially the truck series, because I want to watch Rockingham as much as the next NASCAR fan does. But if you say, oh, yeah, there's going to be 3 races there, there's only going to be 25,000 seats available, that takes away the novelty if you go year after year after year or have multiple races there in the same weekend. I think if you want to keep eyes on the lower divisions in NASCAR, that is the way you do it. That is how I think NASCAR did it, and I think that they handled it to a T over the weekend. So I got to give them props to that. And for the Cup Series, why I say I don't think that they should head there is just because of the fact that I like the novelty aspect of it. I think if you keep it to the lower series, you'll be able to bring in more viewers. I want to now take the turn to Talladega, where the Cup Series is finally going back to a super speedway after back-to-backs, it seemed, in the first 2 weekends. And Talladega is its own monster. Obviously, the start-finish line is heading into turn 1 instead of being in the tri-oval. But it's an exciting weekend. I mean, there's a reason why when you look at the odds, which we'll talk about later, the highest driver is at plus 1,000 because it can be anyone's race. Last season, Tyler Reddick won this spring race, and then it was Ricky Stenhouse Jr. winning the race in the fall. So saying, oh yeah, a driver who's consistent will win this is just don't kid yourself. It's going to be a race that we'll see 4-wide racing, which will be very exciting, but it will be fuel saving. So keep that in the back of your mind that these cars could be going all out, but fuel saving, which I am tired of hearing people complain about because that's just the way the race works. Right? Myself, I was one who complained about it, but it's how NASCAR is nowadays. It's how stage racing is. And that's the point. They wanted to keep drivers to want to fight in the middle of the race, at the beginning of a race. And I think having fuel saving is going to be a factor of that. We'll see 3-wide, we'll see 4-wide racing, and that will be fun. But just remember in the back of your mind, there's a reason why they're not gunning it past each other. There's a reason why one line isn't getting more momentum and people aren't jumping to the high side or the low side. That's going to be the consistent part of the weekend. I am looking forward to it. I think that seeing the Xfinity Series go from Rockingham to Talladega is going to be interesting. But a lot of drivers are probably going to complain because it's super speedway racing. Fans are going to love it. And overall, it's Talladega. What's not to be excited about this track? The last race there, as I mentioned, we saw Tyler Reddick win. And I don't think that will happen again, but what I do think will happen is Brad Keselowski will be up there again. He finished back-to-back top 2 finishes there. And I just want to hold that to the side because with Brad Keselowski finishing back-to-back, I think that is a good move for RFK. The fact that RFK has struggled with Brad Keselowski this season and him being able to find momentum at those type of tracks, the super speedways, and especially Talladega where he's won multiple times, I think it will be good for him to finally be able to get that run that the other RFK Fords have had, but Brad Keselowski has not. But now joining us will be Artie Kempner. Artie, I want to thank you so much for joining me here. Artie Kempner is a 12-time Emmy Award director. He's currently with Fox. Artie, I want to thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. It's good to be here, Garon. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I hope you're having a great day. To start off this interview with you, obviously, I want to go into the nitty gritty of NASCAR production of telecast, but I wanted to ask you and your time with Fox, especially NASCAR side, how what are some of the races that you have enjoyed to telecast? What are the excuse me, the memorable ones that you've had?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of great memories. We've been doing it for 25 years, our team. Look, our first race, 2001, was an amazing race. You had with a tragic finish with Michael Waltrip winning, Darrell Waltrip in the booth, and the legendary Dale Earnhardt um, dying in that race. So it got off to um, we got off to quite a start, and it went from triumph to tragedy pretty quickly. But I will tell you, coming into Talladega, I love the super speedways. I know the drivers don't love the super speedways because it's more or less a roll of the dice or putting a ball in a roulette wheel. But there's just so much action. I never want to go to commercial, like never want to go to commercial when we're green flag racing, and I wish we didn't have to. But you just never know when something good's going to happen. And I'm not talking about the big one. I'm just talking about some of those cool moves that guys make. I mean, they don't really just drive around in circles and stay in line. There's always strategy. And there are certain people that, you were talking about Brad. I mean, all the struggles last year, back to back runner-up finishes, people are always trying to do something to get the edge. And a lot of times, Garen, you hear people talk about super speedways as luck. I don't think it's luck. I think there's a lot of skill. Certain people are really good at super speedways, and certain people who are great race car drivers, Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, are not always great in those situations, especially late in the race. And it's very interesting to see like a Ricky Stenhouse, Michael McDowell, guys that can somehow, Bubba, they somehow get to the front, and so it's fun. But getting back to your original question, I mean, we have been involved at Fox in so many incredible races. I mean, the that same year, 2001, the Atlanta finish with Harvick beating Jeff Gordon to the line, and him with everybody with their hands up in the three. I mean, that was emotional. Were you alive during that time?
No, I was born in 2003, but trust
I was
me,
gonna
I've seen it
say,
many a
you
time.
see, it was a spectacularly emotional deal. I mean, I can tell you, I cried. I've cried a few times in the truck. One was when I knew that Dale was gone at Daytona, and that was another one. I would tell you, I am a big Earnhardt fan. He was my favorite driver. Um, and those like that race in 2001, and Harvick, like I said, Harvick beating Mark Martin to the line in 2007 at Daytona was a great. And that was like I knew Kevin back then, but I don't know him like I know him now, but having worked with him for 2 years and knowing him now for 25. Um, but those super speedway end of races. Look, last year we had incredible finishes. We had three wire, nose finishes, which you don't typically get that. I mean, it was like the cars finish in Atlanta with Suarez having three cars within 2 thousandths of a second. That stuff resonates with you. But you know what the best part of this is, Gareth, for me, is working with this incredible team of people. To talk the way Boyer would talk. I'm sitting on the best hot rod. I'm the driver in this kind of scenario of television, and I've got the best crew chief in Chuck McDonald. I got the best kind of owners and Harvick and Boyer and Joy and Jamie and Regan. We've just got such an incredible technical team that's the memories that you have. I mean, it's not great for your audience to talk about those kind of memories, but we love what we do. So when we get these great finishes and these great events, um, it just really does bring everybody closer together, and it also just brings excitement to the viewer. It's really
So,
cool.
talking about excitement, there's a reason that the viewer gets the excitement, especially from the director aspect, where you're taking the shots. You're the one who's basically telling the story as it unfolds to those of us at home. What is it like being in the production truck at a NASCAR race, like just during? Because I'm sure it's longer than just the 3.5 hours of the production of the race.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, our truck is a beehive of activity. It's very interesting compared to a football or any other sports truck because there are so many people that are integral to making the decisions that we make. Yes, granted, I kind of have the main decision making power when it comes to live pictures, but Chuck McDonald, our producer, he's kind of like our crew chief or our head coach in football, and he's kind of moving us from place to place. We're back and forth talking to Kevin and Mike and Clint in the booth. Like we have a running dialogue, with I have a running dialogue with Clint about things he's looking. You can't hear him talking to me, but we're talking back and forth. And our pit producer, Jake Jolivet, and our coordinating producer, Lindsay Mandia, and our AD, Rich Gross, and our replay director, Darren Foster. Like it is constant voices talking back and forth, but we're in a rhythm and we're tuned into each other. And we're trying to get the viewer to the best story. I mean, that's really what we do. Like the lead is not always, that important. The guys, Larson last week, in Bristol is out to a 3-4 second lead. Well, what else is going on? Who's got a chance here? What's the best story? Who's coming? Who's going? You know? So that all goes into everything that I do and everything that we do as a team. And for me to be the trigger man, the driver on this, and to make those decisions, I mean, I hope that I can bring a sense of excitement and energy that is on the track. I hope that I can bring that to the people at home. And I think that's what we as a team at Fox Sports are always focused on.
So you talked about the like being the driver to where you're the one who's there like in the middle of the beehive. I liked how you put that because I mean these are a lot of the same things you would use for in the middle of a super speedway race, those type of events. What are the technical like aspects of like how many cameras are used in a race? How many shots are used in one lap? I know it's a lot on you, but I'd love to hear you break that down to just show the audience how it actually works.
Well, I think that's a great question, Garon, and it has to change. I believe it has to change as you're going through the race, depending on where you are situationally in the race. Are you covering a battle? So if I'm covering a battle, I'm not going to cut as much because I don't want the viewer to have to kind of make that shift, that eye adjustment, right? Because it's subtle,
Mhm.
but you want to make sure that the viewer's getting the full experience of what's going on the racetrack. Remember, our job is to cover. We cover sports. We don't create, right? We're not movie makers. We are looking at what's out in front of us, and we're trying to do the best job of bringing the viewer as close to that action as possible without kind of interfering with that kind of that viewing pleasure, right? So I cut laps differently from lap to lap depending on situation. Sometimes, hey, it's just time to show the cars ripping through the cameras, the robotic cameras on the walls. Sometimes we're going to use in-car cameras, to get us around the track so that Clint and Kevin can talk about how people are managing tires. When you start talking technically, I think you lose a lot of the viewers, except if you connect those technical things to why somebody's doing well. Like last year at Bristol, Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex managing their tires the way they did. So how were they doing that? Where were they running? What were those lines? What were their times? They realized, hey, I can't be running a 15-7 lap at Bristol because my tires are going to be torn up. So I'm okay running a 16-3 and getting around the track. So those are the types of things that will dictate how we cover a lap, what replays we go to, when we use graphics, all those types of things. Like I would tell you, I've watched Bristol races, and I study this stuff, so it's kind of what I do for a living. And if you make 5 cuts consistently on a Bristol, one lap of Bristol, right, you're going to make people car sick. You're going to. It's
Yeah.
just it's because you're going so quickly.
Hmm.
They're 15.5-second laps. So every 3 seconds you're going ready, one, take one, two, one, take three, four, 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 take four, six. And the viewer, like, round and around they go, and you've got to be careful.
Hmm.
You've got to make this viewing experience engaging, compelling, and exciting. You can't make it uncomfortable, even if it's only subconsciously uncomfortable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Something I wanted to ask you about, especially that the Cup Series is going from a short track up to a 2.5 mile long track. What's the mindset for you and the truck and anyone a part of the production of the race of knowing, okay, we're going from 15, 16-second laps to 45, 50-second laps?
Well, I think that's a great one as well, because we do talk about the difference. Short track racing is more difficult, I think, to cover, to be an announcer, an analyst on, because things happen so much quicker. Laps click off much quicker. You've got to be more concise in your analysis, because you're just typically not going to have that kind of time to delve into, like, point A, B, C, and D.
Hmm.
Where at Talladega, Garon, you're able to kind of, they're in a line, they're 3 by 3, they're 12 deep, but you can kind of make points. And that
Hmm.
lap is longer. They're staying in positions longer. They're not strung out. So you can talk more specifically about things, and we're able to show you what's going on the racetrack to include that, but we're not leaving anything out. Does that make sense? We can see the leader, and we can see the 3 cars up front or the 2 cars up front, but we can also see eighth place. So what is
Hmm.
eighth place doing? We can put their throttle and telemetry up there and showing, okay, we can see comparatively he's only using 80% throttle, where the guys up front are using 100% throttle. So we can talk about all that. So in a lot of ways, super speedway racing is a lot easier, or let's say, a lot less difficult
Okay.
to cover, to talk about, to really kind of bring to the viewer than short track racing.
And then the final question I had about the production side of it was, this was more so personal question for me that I've always wondered is, obviously the backbone of NASCAR is sponsors. How do you, especially as a director, knowing, and or overall just the team, how do you get these, cars that are typically back markers, how do you get them their airtime and build it into the show, or sorry, into the storyline, especially knowing, hey, they may not make an impact in this race, but they have sponsors on their car that are here for a reason.
Yeah, and that is complicated. I would tell you, let me go to F1 first. When I watch F1, I see them making a concerted effort to go to the battle of 17th.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, I mean, I know you got to do this, but why are you doing this?
Hmm.
You know, we have to, we are conscious, we have a consciousness, I guess, about that, about people's sponsors. And I would tell you, when we do qualifying and practice shows, we really kind of try to dig in with everybody, with to let people know if there's a new sponsor and that. But that's something that we do, as Mike Joy does, that we do as a group. That Mike leads. It's like, hey, we got a new sponsor. We want to let them know, welcome to NASCAR. But we're kind of an independent group in a lot
Okay.
of ways. So I'm not going to just we're not going to just go back to the guy in 32nd, just
Hmm.
because we haven't shown the car. Like, Rick, like cars like Rick Ware Racing, like, that they're putting this time in, that their cars are just not typically running up near the front. So you're just not going to show the Arby's Cody Ware car, even if you do love Arby's, like I do,
Hmm.
and you enjoy it, but you still, that's not really kind of our job. Our job is to really bring you the storylines in an order, and sometimes of importance, but not we don't forget things either.
Hmm.
It's a business. We're in a business, right? And we have to be very judicious in how we manage the entertainment side, the sponsorship side. Look, we are big NASCAR supporters. mean, I would tell you, one of the things that I would say we pride ourselves at Fox Sports on is that we care about the sport. We care about the event. It's not about us being TV people, right? Creative TV people. That needs to be pushed to the side. That doesn't even have a, to me, that doesn't have a guiding force in this. I have three rules in television, three important rules. Number one, the integrity of the event is more important than anything else we might do. Meaning that no matter what we've prepared, if we've got an important battle, that takes precedent over anything else. Number two, just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do something, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes technologically we have things, it's like, are we really helping the viewer understand what's going on better, Garon, or are we getting in the way, right? And then my third one is, and I won't use the actual word, don't fall in love with your own stuff. Okay, I can use the other word, but that's the point. Just because you thought about it on Tuesday and everybody thought, oh, what a great idea, doesn't mean you're going to put it in on Sunday. Sunday is for the viewer, right? That's
Hmm.
why we do this. And I try to feel I direct for the viewer. And Chuck McDonald produces for the viewer, whether we're doing NASCAR or NFL or golf or whatever it is. Our job is to produce and direct races for the viewer. And people who lose sight of that are not doing their job and are doing a disservice to the fans that are out there that are tuning in.
Well, Artie, I do want to say that as a fan, that's very refreshing to hear. It's very nice to hear that the people who were bringing this to the millions of fans watching, that they care about the viewer more than anything else, and I think that's really important. I wanted to ask you about a track that, I just wanted to ask you a general question of, is there a certain track you wish NASCAR could go back to that you would love to be a director of a race at, to be able to broadcast this certain track on TV, like NASCAR going back to Rockingham and the Truck
Well,
Series?
that's I was gonna. If you would ask me that question 5 years ago, it's Rock. It's the Rock. I
Okay.
love Rockingham. I loved Rockingham. We did that our first few years before it kind of shut down, and I thought that was such a cool track to race on, because it's so gritty, it's so sandy, and drivers have to drive. Like it's like the cars don't do all the work,
Hmm.
right? And the drivers, that's what I love about NASCAR, is that it's the driver has such an important role. Like most people think, well, the driver does everything. Well, this is a sport with engineers really have a
Yeah.
lot to say. But at certain tracks like Rockingham, I think the driver is in more control. In Bristol last week, the driver's in control. And that,
Hmm.
when I said earlier about Talladega and Daytona, the driver's still in control. The engineering is really important, but like, how do those guys that we talked about earlier, how do they get to the front? Like almost every super speedway race, how do they somehow make their way close to the front where other guys somehow can't? Right. So the Rock is the one track that we kind of were there and then it went away. Look, it's nice that they brought back North Wilkesboro, but I had never directed at North Wilkesboro because it shut down before I started. You
Hmm.
know, would I like to do something at Hickory? I mean, yeah, I'd love to do something at Hickory. I mean, it's so old school. It's different. And look, Bowman Gray was fabulous, Garon. I don't know, if you were able to go. I don't know where you live, but it was such a cool deal. I didn't know what it was going to be like. And then when I got there and it was all done, all set up, like, because we had been there earlier when it wasn't, it's like, oh my God, this is fabulous. I mean, they've done such a great job. I mean, Ben Kennedy and that team really has dug in. The Coliseum
Hmm.
was a fun deal. That first year was just electric, but in a lot of ways, it's just kind of subtly, it's kind of the energy was
Yeah.
kind of lost. But with Bowman Gray, I'm hoping that they can keep that energy for a while. But I've been able to experience most tracks on the NASCAR circuit. I would love to do a race at New Hampshire. We've never done a race at New Hampshire.
Hmm.
At Fox, granted, sometimes people say, well, they're a boring race. It's a flat track, flat 1 mile. But hey, anytime I get a chance to sit down with my team and direct, My belief is I can always make it look better than anybody else did, right? I want to make that viewer excited. I want to make it compelling. And I wouldn't mind, getting a chance to do New Hampshire. But I've done most every other track. So the Rock was the one that, I'm glad is back on the schedule in some way, shape, or form.
You talked about Dale Earnhardt being your favorite driver. Uh, Over the years, was there any other drivers that stood out to you? Are there any drivers that you like you mentioned Clint Boyer and Kevin Harvick? Were there any drivers that ever entered the booth or just overall that you enjoyed working with or being a fan of?
Yeah. Well, first off, I have to say my first favorite drivers were David Pearson, number one, and Cale Yarborough, number two. So I'm not that old, right? So I watch Pearson on TV,
Hmm.
and I watch Kale on TV. I actually got a chance to direct some Dale Earnhardt races. Look, I am a huge Jeff Gordon fan, which is strange from being an Earnhardt guy.
Yeah.
Um, I became a huge Jeff Gordon fan because I got to know Jeff.
Hmm.
Jeff is a fantastic person. Now, people might not like this and like that. It was a pouty little California boy and blah 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 blah. But I know Jeff. I've watched Jeff. I watched Jeff do multiple Make-A-Wishes, for kids. Darrell Waltrip, used to have his motor coach, and he and Jeff ended up parked next to each other very often. And I would be in Darrell's coach every Sunday morning. We'd have breakfast together, and I'd be in his coach, and there would be, right next door, there's Jeff for a half hour, just with a family, with a young person, whether it's battling some illness or, and it was amazing to see Jeff. And as I got to know him, um, you know, I guess he could become my favorite all-time driver. Though Pearson is always going to hold that rank because, the impact when you're a kid, you, you,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
never lose that, you
True.
know. Um, but I enjoy racing because I enjoy the people. Now I'm getting a little older, so I don't connect like I used to connect with the drivers, like in the early 2000s when I was like just in my early 40s, and a lot of the drivers were in their late 20s or 30s. The Sadler family, Elliot and Hermie, were great friends based on our autism connection. Hermie's daughter Haley being on the spectrum, and we connected a lot. And Jamie McMurray and I, and now we work together. I've always loved Jamie, and Jamie's sister had a son with autism who passed away. So those are special relationships, Garrett, that I'm really fortunate to have had. Um, this new group of drivers, these younger guys. I mean, it's cool to watch a Christopher Bell, out there and creating his persona a little bit.
Yeah.
I would say I like Kyle, but Kyle Larson is just boring to the nth degree. I get it. You know, he's a great racer, and that's
Uh-huh.
why he's there, right? He's not there to entertain me, right? But I wish every once in a while he would be a little bit more exuberant, and offer a little more when we talk to him, though he's getting a little better. Um, but I love Joey Logano now. And I know he's a hot topic, and I love Denny Hamlin. You know
You're
why?
gonna rub some people the wrong way with those two.
And you know what? That's just fine because they say what they think. They're
Hmm.
both really smart. Love them or hate them. That's what we like about our sports,
Yep.
right? If you're not loved or hated, and you're just you don't get any attention. What are you doing for the sport? You're not kind of grabbing hold of fans. Like that's what makes team sports. You can live in the Philadelphia area and you just hate the Dallas Cowboys your whole life, or the New
Uh-huh.
York Giants your whole life, or Washington your whole life, and you just love your Eagles. Well, it's the same thing in individual sports. I mean, Kyle Busch has been a black hat for years, right? At least in my opinion, right? And the
Hmm.
only thing that's brought him close that doesn't make him completely dark is his lovely wife Samantha. So that's kind of what keeps it going. But you have black hats, you have the guys in white hats, you have your heroes, you have your guys people that you don't like, and I typically like people. I'm a big, if I meet somebody and I like that person, I root for them. And that's why I like Joey. I like Denny. Denny will tell you exactly what he thinks. Denny and I don't always agree,
Hmm.
but I like the way he goes about thinking.
Well, I don't want to hold you here much longer, but I have to mention beforehand, your work raising awareness for families with autism. You've raised millions of dollars in the past. Could you just talk a little bit about your work and where people in the audience could find to maybe help donate or to maybe just become more aware of what you've done or what they can do?
Well, I have a 30-year-old son, he's 30 years old now, Ethan, who was diagnosed with autism in 1997, and we, his mom and I went about creating with another group of parents, Autism Delaware back in 1998. And we knew that our son was going to be in school
Hmm.
for a short period of time, and then he was going to be an adult for a lot longer. And we needed to help create programs for not just Ethan, but all of our families on the spectrum. Autism it can be it's a very difficult disability, not just for the individual, depending on what their challenges are, but for the family, because it creates family challenges. So we went about trying to create programs that will help not only the individual, but the families. We want people to live fulfilling lives. And Autism Delaware, I feel, does that. We serve 185 adults with autism. And we started out in our house, being basically doing some advocacy work and,
Hmm.
doing awareness work. And we grew that from having all volunteer, uh, to being now we have over 100 people working in the community. And, that work for Autism Delaware, helping our people on the spectrum live their best lives, working in the community, right? Having recreational opportunities, having social opportunities. These are things that are I think they're difficult for everybody in some ways, but certainly with people with disabilities, it's even more challenging. And we try to create outlets that will help our folks get out there. And I've been very blessed and good fortune of working at Fox Sports and working with NASCAR, because I don't think any sport has helped us in the autism community more than the NASCAR community did. When I came to our people at Fox and said, I'd like to do some promotional stuff during April, they were all on board, and so was NASCAR. Drivers were wearing, the drivers were using had stickers on their cars. I mean, there was one time we had, like, of the 43 cars, we had 37 cars carrying our autism stickers.
Wow.
Our group, our in-car unit, Broadcast Sports International, and the Hall of Fame innovator named Peter Larson. Peter would donate a car package every year just for autism awareness. And we got that from so many people from the community. And I think the NASCAR community really not only supported, but helped spread the awareness that we needed. And it helps with advocacy and getting things done. So I'll always be thankful for the community that we have at not just Fox, but with NASCAR, for that incredible support. It really has made a difference and continues to do so.
Well, Artie, I want to thank you for joining me today. It was very insightful. I hope those who will watch this find found what you said insightful. And lastly, I want to congratulate you on your new role with Monday Night Football. You're going back with Aikman and Buck. I I'm sure you're looking forward to that. And once again, Artie, I want to thank you so much for joining.
Oh, you're welcome, Garon. Have a great day and a great week, and enjoy Talladega. I don't know if you can enjoy it as much as I will, but try.
I will
Okay?
try my best. Thank you so much,
Good.
sir.
You're welcome. Have a great day. Bye
You
bye.
too. That was Fox Sports Artie Kempner joining me. Very, very well. I was very excited to have him on. I enjoyed the conversation we had. I think it was very insightful. I I was really struck whenever he mentioned that the fans, that the broadcaster for the fans, and I think something that a lot of people lose insight on whenever people struggle to like, why are they focused on this and not this battle going on last, like he mentioned, like why is there a need to? It's the storyline. And I think that was very, very insightful for what was going on and for what the sport needs to be able to grow and to be able to get back to where NASCAR once was, back whenever Fox picked up the broadcasting rights to the first half of the season. I want to get back to Talladega. As I mentioned beforehand, was Brad Keselowski, but But I mentioned the lines. I mentioned your favorite drivers, the ones who could win, the ones who have an opportunity to win. And to be honest, I do not expect really anyone to just be a favorite for this race. As Artie Kempner mentioned earlier in the interview we had, he talked about that it's not just luck, and I have to agree with him on there, but I do always believe that there is a little bit. There's a reason why William Byron during the Daytona 500 went from 9th or 10th place by just staying on the outside, gunned it through, got past Denny Hamlin, and was able to win the race. And he is the best average finishing driver at Talladega. So that lets you know that drivers like Byron can be up there near the front. That also talks about to the other drivers. I'll bring up the list of the best average finishers at this track. And you look at William Byron and Chase Elliott, and I think Chase Elliott being up there, he's won at Talladega, but something else is that he has one of the best average finishes every single season. Behind them is 007 Ryan Blaney, then Eric Jones and Alex Bowman. That's 3 Hendrick cars in the top 5. So if you want to bet on a certain manufacturer winning, maybe go with Chevrolet whenever those lines come out. But I do believe your best bet for the weekend is picking a driver who has shown good speed and has a little bit better value than plus 1,000 or plus 1,100, like a Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He won last fall, and he was someone I've kept my eye on because his line is at plus 2,800. You want to talk about great value? That is some great value for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. But I want to close the show off with this about Talladega, is that for super speedway racing, NASCAR and the fans have seen an issue with how the races ran when it comes to how drivers save fuel. There's tire saving nowadays at certain tracks with the pavement getting worn out. But I think that it is awesome to see 3 wide, 4 wide racing. I know there will be a big one as much as you guys do, and I think that will be very exciting to see. Hopefully your favorite driver isn't caught up in it. And in my opinion, I hope that there would be a clean race right to the finish so we don't have to worry about another caution controversy. But I want to thank you guys again for joining me. I want to thank Artie Kempner again for joining the show as well. Very nice of him to come on. And I hope you guys enjoy the race weekend. And I will catch you guys again next Wednesday at 6 o'clock here on the Bleacher Brother Network. Thank you guys so much for joining.